Welcome to the D2Football.com National Football Preview Pod with Chuck Bitner, and I'm your host, Justin Polizzi. Welcome tonight, Chuck.
Thanks, Justin. Happy to be doing this. As you know, I've been the national columnist for D2 for the last couple of years and other conferences long before that. This year, because of a lot of other demands on everyone's time, we're going to kind of transform the written column that I have gotten so accustomed to doing. We're going to try to do that in podcast format to give the audience a little bit of a different flavor, hopefully be able to expand on a few different topics, a few more topics than we normally get to do. And selfishly, hopefully something that requires a little bit less of a labor-intensive effort to write all the paragraphs and put all my thoughts on paper. And we'll just do it here in podcast format. So appreciate you stepping in as host for our first preview pod. This will be a little bit of a work in progress, so hopefully the audience will be patient with us. But we have a huge season coming up, and I think we're gonna start by going through a conference by conference preview before we actually have games on the calendar. So
yeah, very excited week 0, Chuck. Very excited about 2024 and diving into this pod with you. So let's just jump right in. So we're going to take a look at the first conference is the CIAA. The defending champion is Virginia Union. You see that in the top right of your screen. And on the left side, we have the coaches poll. The coaches voted. They said Virginia State's going to win the league, followed by Virginia Union, Fayetteville State, Johnson C. Smith, and Bowie State. You picked Virginia Union to win the league this year, Chuck. What are your thoughts on that? And give us some insight into why you think Virginia Union, not Virginia State, is going to be the conference champion this year.
Well, I was pretty surprised when I saw that preseason coaches poll come out, and I think some of the other CIAA insiders were as well. Obviously, Virginia State was a very good team a year ago. We expect them to be good this year as well. But I certainly can't get behind going against Virginia Union for the championship here. I really like the team that they have coming back. For me, it really starts with their rushing offense. They're not just a one-player offense. Of course, we know all about Jada Byers. But they have a lot of really good players, and they have excellent line play. It's extremely well-coached team. They do have to play Virginia State on the road this year, I believe, and wouldn't be shocked if kind of comes down to those two at the end of the season. But no, I definitely think that Virginia Union is the team to beat in this league.
And what about your team to watch in the CIAA this season, Chuck?
Yeah, so we're going to try to spotlight some teams that might not necessarily be in the championship race here, but somebody that we think is really worth keeping an eye on. In this league, it's Johnson C. Smith. The Golden Bulls had a really nice season a year ago. 7-4 was a really good step forward for them, their best season in quite a long time. Had a couple of really quality performances. I'm really excited to see what they can do. I think this is year 3 now for their coaching staff. They've really done a great job building up that program. They've recruited well. Would not be surprised to see them start punching up towards the top of the league. And we can see from the coaches poll, they're expecting some big things out of Johnson C. Smith as well.
Excellent. Next, we have the GAC, and our defending champ, who we all know is national champ Harding. And the coaches feel that way again. They picked Harding to win the league, followed by Ouachita Baptist, Southern Arkansas, Henderson State, Southeastern Oklahoma State in at number 5. And in your pick on this one, Chuck, you picked Harding, excuse me. You picked Harding to win the league. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it really can't go against the Bisons here. I think the gap between those top 2 teams, Harding and Ouachita, it's still a pretty substantial gap down to the rest of the league. And certainly when you look at the team that Harding has coming back, especially on the offensive side of the football, I expect them to be a juggernaut again. Now, they did lose a couple of really key players on that defense, but numbers-wise, they also do have a lot of starters coming back. So will they be quite as elite defensively as they were a year ago? I don't know if they'll be at that level, but still expect them to be very, very good. But the one thing I do want to say is I think with Harding breaking through and winning a championship last year, they obviously deserve all the accolades and all the attention that goes along with that. But when we start to kind of let that be the narrative of the GAC and the teams involved here, I think we kind of forget how good Ouachita has been over the last several years. They've had 3 undefeated conference championships in the last 5 seasons. So they've also been a very elite team in this league. I expect big things from them. They will definitely be a challenger by no means is this a cakewalk for Harding to repeat.
And how about your team to watch in the GAC, Chuck?
Well, I kind of thought that this was going to be a little bit of a sneaker pick for me to throw Southern Arkansas in there as a team to watch, but you can see the coaches obviously think highly of them as well, because they picked the Mule Riders at number 3 ahead of Henderson State, who was a playoff team a year ago. Now, part of that is Southern Arkansas actually beat Henderson a year ago. So 10-2 team last year, made it to a bowl game, beat an MIAA team in a bowl game. A lot of players coming back on that team, Justin. They have 3 Elite 100 watch list players on that unit. First teamer on the offensive line, second teamer at running back, Drake Scales, probably a player we don't talk about enough in all of our national previews. So I think the Mule Riders can be a contender. Still think the gap for them to get up and really challenge Ouachita and Harding, I don't think they get there this year, but do expect them to be a really good team again.
Yeah, that should be exciting this year, Chuck. I'm really looking. This is one of the conferences I'm really looking forward to. I think there's a lot of excitement there, and I kind of agree with everything you just said with the top 2 kind of being a little bit farther ahead than everybody else.
No doubt that when your league wins a national championship, that the first in their league history, we do start to look at that conference a little bit differently. And I think the GAC and all the members are really kind of benefiting from that high tide.
Without a doubt. All right, the GLIAC, or the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. Our defending champion is Grand Valley State. Coaches voted, and Ferris State, the number 1 pick this season going into 2024. Grand Valley in at number 2, Davenport 3, Saginaw Valley 4, and Michigan Tech at 5. Chuck, you picked Ferris, so you are right there with the rest of the coaches in this league. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, and it's close. I think in the coaches poll, it was 4-3 Grand Valley to Ferris and 1 vote for Davenport. The total votes were extremely close. So I think the coaches are still a little undecided on who the favorite here is as well. I mean, anytime those 2 teams play each other, it's a toss-up. And listen, we respect all the competitors here, but just being realistic, it's a 2-team league. Yeah. And the GLIAC championship will come down to Ferris at Grand Valley later this year. The winner of that game is going to be the winner of the GLIAC championship this year. I'm very confident of that. And I like Ferris. I do. I think that they're going to have an excellent team. We know that they're a 2-quarterback system. Now, they did lose Mike Mitchell. Trinidad Chambliss is going to kind of step into that role, and we know all about Carson Gulker. But it's not just about them. They have one of the deepest receiving cores that they think they've ever had there. I think that they really bolstered their defense with some additions at linebacker, and we know how fast and athletic they are on that side of the ball. And I think this is going to be the year that they reclaim the GLIAC championship. Grand Valley won the last 2, but I think Ferris gets it this year.
And how about your team to watch in the GLIAC, Chuck?
That's a logo that D2 fans won't be familiar with. That's the Roosevelt Lakers. They are a new team to Division II. Transferring from the NAIA. So they are in a transition period. They have been a very competitive NAIA team. They're a winning program. They've been a ranked top 25 NAIA for most of the last decade or so. So it's been a competitive team. I think it's going to be a really tough transition to Division II, playing in this league where, we've kind of acknowledged that it's a 2-team fight at the top, but when you get below that, you're still talking about some very good football teams, and in Saginaw and Tech can be very competitive. Davenport's been in the playoffs. So, but I think that there's some winnable games in that schedule for Roosevelt. So I'm very excited to see how they can match up in a league of this quality.
Excellent. It should be a great season. And like you said, that the Ferris State Grand Valley game is always a circle down everybody's calendar here as the season starts up. So next up, we have the Great Lakes Valley Conference, or the GLVC. The defending champ is Indianapolis. And again, the coaches picked Indy to win it. Truman State at 2, McKendree 3, Missouri S&T is 4, and then Southwest Baptist in at 5 in the coaches poll. Chuck, you picked Indy. Why'd you pick them?
Well, in the GLVC, this has almost been UIndy's personal playground for the last several years. Other than when Lindenwood was in the league, they were a very competitive team. And, Truman's been a good challenger, but UIndy has undoubtedly been the top team. And I expect that to be the case this year. They have a very good looking team coming back. So I don't think there's any question in my mind that they are the favorite what I'm really curious about is where's the challenge going to come from this year? We expect it'll be Truman State. They've been very good the last several years. They're kind of on the cusp of being a playoff team. I think that they will be very good again this year. We kind of expected McKendree to possibly be a team that's ready to punch up to the next level. They were a team that started 0-5 last year, won 5 games in a row in the second half of the season, and actually earned a bowl berth. So, we kind of expected that they might be a team that could maybe take the next step forward. But now they had a very off-cycle coaching change. It actually just happened right before teams reported for camp, which is a very unusual time for that to happen. So, transition that they're going through there. We don't really know, how or if that impacts them in any way. So I think when you stack it all together, Justin, this still feels like it's UND's race.
Yeah, for sure. I see it that way as well. So
yeah, and I had McKendree as my team to watch for the reasons I actually just mentioned. That coaching change is a big variable for them in this league.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to play a bigger impact than a lot of people think. Again, you pick them as that team to watch, but it just depends on how smooth they can go. I know they hired I think there's their defensive coordinator, a longtime coach there. So hopefully that transition is pretty seamless. And like you said, Chuck, they are a team to watch and maybe can give UND a run here as the season goes. Next up, we have the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. And we have the defending champs, the Dragons. Findlay picked number 1, Ashland 2, Tiffin 3, Hillsdale 4, and Northwood 5. Chuck, give us your pick, and why'd you pick them?
Yeah, it's probably feels like a little bit of a disservice to Tiffin as the defending champs to be picked 3rd in the league coming into the new season, but that's just because of a lot of changeover there, coaching change, a lot of roster turnover, and I think the coaches really kind of feel more confident in the stability that we've seen at Ashland and Findlay. Coaches went with Findlay. I can get on board with that, Justin, but I'm going Ashland here.
Yeah.
Ashland actually has an 8-game winning streak going. Now, they started 1-3 a year ago. They had a very tough early portion of the schedule. Started 1-3, but then they won 8 games in a row to close out that season, including a bowl game win. So I think that momentum really carries into this new season, especially with a conference race at the top that's kind of up for grabs among those top 3 teams. I like Ashland to come out on top. Now, that said, they have pretty much the same schedule they had a year ago, and it is a tough one. They play IUP in the opener out of conference, and they play Ferris State. So, if you start the season, 1-3, 2-2, don't get down on them. There is still an opportunity to win this conference, even if they don't do as well in the out of conference portion of the schedule. And maybe they will. I think they'll be very competitive against IUP. And probably give Ferris a decent game as well. But, if we come out of that first month of the season and we're not really looking at them or talking about them because of their record, I still think they will definitely be the team to beat down the stretch for the conference championship race.
Yeah, and I think you picked 3 teams. I mean, there's 3 teams, 1, 2, and 3, whether it's Findlay, Ashland, or Tiffin. Those are very, very tough games and very, very tough teams that we're used to talking about as the season goes the last couple of years. So 3 very viable options. Chuck, what about your team to watch here in the Great Midwest?
Going with Northwood as the team to watch. They had a coaching change last year. A lot of down years recently for the Timberwolves. But last year, after a tough start, I think they were 1-4, I believe, to start the season. Really kind of pulled things together, and they got to 5-6 by the end of the season. And I think that was a really good end result for them. I think, if you could think about getting to 5-6, some really competitive wins. They actually had a landmark victory over Findlay that nobody really saw coming. And that was even kind of earlier in the season when they were still trying to find their footing. So I think that really kind of showed the potential that might be there. I really like the coaching staff that they brought in Northwood. So I'm kind of looking for the Timberwolves to be in the mix right behind that top 3, maybe even get up there to that 4th spot in this league.
Excellent. Well, next up, we have the Gulf South Conference, a perennial conference contender on a national level in Division II football, and 2 teams defending champs that we are very familiar with. Top 25 teams in Valdosta State and Delta State shared the championship last year. Coaches poll, they've picked Valdosta State at number 1, West Florida in at number 2, Delta down to number 3, West Alabama 4, and North Greenville at 5. Chuck, you picked Delta State. You went against the grain here, picked the Statesmen to win the league. Bold pick. Why'd you pick the Statesmen here in a very competitive Gulf South?
Well, I completely understand why Valdosta State is perceived as the favorite here. Excellent season a year ago, huge rebound after a really bad 2022. Very, very good looking football team. Won a share of the Gulf South last year. Split a pair of games with Delta State and actually got the playoff win, which got them into that regional final. But I think Delta State's going to be a little bit better than most other people expect them to be. I was a tad surprised they were picked all the way down to number 3 in this league. I think that they're going to be better than most people think. I'm obviously, when you lose a talent like Patrick Shegog, that's kind of where all the attention goes. How are we going to backfill that position? I think they're going to be okay there. They've got a quarterback who actually started games before. Patrick really kind of asserted control there. It's a player that's been in that program for, I believe, 5 years. I think they're going to be okay there. They always have excellent line play at Delta State, and I think that really was a big factor in a couple of games last year. The interesting thing is we're not really even talking about West Florida, and we know that they'll be a factor here as well. But I think Delta State's going to surprise some people.
Excellent. And you picked your team to watch as a team we haven't really talked too much about in recent years, North Greenville, in at 5 in the coaches poll. Chuck, they're your team to watch.
Well, I don't think they're going to punch into the, those top 3 positions here, Justin, but the North Greenville Crusaders, now the Timberwolves, or not Timberwolves, Trailblazers. That's it. It was one of those Trailblazers. Yeah, they actually just went through some rebranding here in the offseason. They played as an independent for a long time. They played as a scheduling partner for the SAC, and they had a lot of success during those years. Since joining the GSC as an affiliate member, they have not had a winning season in the conference. They've been close, but they have not had a winning season in the GSC. I think this is the year that maybe it could happen. And the reason I'm kind of curious to see if they can do it is this actually will be their final year in the GSC because of the formation of Conference Carolinas. The Trailblazers will actually be moving to Conference Carolinas, which is their home for all of their other sports. So curious to see if they might be able to go out on a really good note and close their tenure in the GSC with a winning season in the conference.
Yeah, Trailblazers are going to take a little getting used to, for sure. I think we'll be stumbling over.
Well, clearly we already fell down the stairs a couple of times on that. Yeah. So
I know
we'll get it
for sure.
We'll get it.
So, yeah. All right, the Lone Star Conference, Chuck, and Central Washington picked at number 1, Angelo State 2, Permian Basin 3, Texas A&M Kingsville is the 4, and Midwestern State in at the 5. Chuck, give us your pick and why.
Again, as with the GSC, I understand why the coaches poll went Central Washington, and I understand why a lot of people are looking at them as the favorite. But, on our season preview on Inside D2 Football, we kind of posed the question to each other, is Central Washington really the legit conference contender, or are they kind of just riding a big wave of momentum because of the way they finished with a playoff run a year ago? And I think it's a little bit of both. And obviously a big part of it also is the amount of talent that they have coming back on both sides of the ball. They bring it back a lot from their team that had a really nice playoff run a year ago. So I do understand that. But, there's a part of me, Justin, that also thinks if I go back to the week before that playoff run, UT Permian Basin really asserted their authority in the Lone Star. And that was not a competitive game when Central Washington played them. Falcons won that one handily, won the Lone Star. I'm a little surprised that they came in at number 3 in the coaches poll. I think that they're going to have a really good chance to repeat. Now, big variable here, Kenny Hernser, who was the transfer quarterback who had such a great season for UTPB. He's out of eligibility. He's moved on. I do expect that the Falcons are actually still going to have an experienced starter. They actually have the opportunity to potentially go back with Dylan Graham, who started most of the 2022 season. He's still there, still part of that program. So they have some experience to rely on. They've also got some others that might be in play. And the skill talent in this team is very, very good outside that quarterback position. So I'm going to go with the Falcons to repeat here.
Excellent. And your team to watch, a little bit of a surprise here, Chuck. Your team to watch in the Lone Star.
Well, it's going to take a little time. West Texas A&M really was in need of kind of a program reboot. They were kind of down and out there for a couple of years. And last year was the first season with Josh Lynn, who came in from Nebraska Kearney after a very successful stint there. So, we know it's going to take a couple of years to get things built up there. I don't think this is the year that they get back to, prominence in the Lone Star, but I'm expecting to see progress. And, I think a winning season is doable, maybe even, a bit better than just a winning season. I think that, the West Texas fans have to be a little patient here. But progress is what we're looking for. They had a couple games last year that they lost, that they were very competitive in those games. So we're looking for the steps forward. And I think that we're going to see that down there in Canyon.
Excellent. Excited to watch. Next, the MIAA, defending champs, tie between Pitt State and Central Missouri. Coaches poll ranked Central Missouri 1, Pitt State 2, Northwest Missouri in at 3, Emporia State 4, and Fort Hays in at 5. Chuck, you picked Central Missouri to win it. Give us your thoughts on why you think Central Missouri is the favorite to win.
Well, this is probably the deepest league in all of Division II, and certainly in the top half. So we could do a whole podcast just on the MIAA. And good news for you on that, Justin. We actually do have an entire podcast just for the MIAA. So
fantastic.
That's coming out soon with Matt Witwicky hosting and John Dykstra. They'll dive into all these teams in a lot more detail than we have the time to do here. But I'm going with the coaches here. I think Central Missouri is the top pick. Obviously, an exceptional season that they had a year ago. And I agree with Pitt State being the number 2 team, kind of right behind them. Should be a very close race. I think what is very interesting is, is Northwest Missouri going to get back to where we expect them to be? Can they get back into that top 2, top 3, possibly even push Central Missouri and Pittsburgh State? So I'm really curious about that. But I think it is definitely those 2 teams have to be at the top of this list. And I think with, the offensive talent there on the Central Missouri roster, some strides that they made defensively as well over the second half of last year. I definitely go with the coaches here that the Mules are the top pick in the MIAA.
Gotcha. And how about your team to watch?
That would be Missouri Southern. Really, really respect what has happened there in Joplin over the last couple of years. This is a program that's really kind of been just in the doldrums for a long time. And, Justin, in a league that's this deep, it is so hard to kind of make those strides just to get up into the top half. And it's really been a struggle for them to try to do that. Last season was a really good one for Missouri Southern. Now, 5-6, that's a losing record. But if you dig a little bit deeper than that, had a couple of really good wins in there, including closing the season by beating Missouri Western, knocking them out of playoff positions. Honestly, they were probably about 2 to 3 plays away from having a 7 and possibly even an 8-win season. So very competitive team from start to finish last season. When we talk about, coach of the year candidates, obviously nationally, we're going to look at, who led a huge turnaround or who, won a championship we didn't expect to see. But I also really like to look at the coaches who are bringing a program up from really the bottoms of a division. And Atiba Bradley and his staff at Missouri Southern are just doing a fantastic job. Hope to see that progress continue, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year.
Yeah, it should be an exciting season in the MIAA. So looking forward to that. And I think you make a great point. Northwest Missouri, are they able to push Central Missouri and Pitt State and get back to that top tier team?
Eyes and conversation will be on the MIAA all season on Inside D2 Football. I have no doubt, because this is, we've got a lot of teams here that will be nationally relevant.
Yeah. Next up is the Mountain East, Chuck. Charleston is your defending champions. Coaches voted. They picked Charleston again to win it. UNC Pembroke in at number 2, Frostburg State number 3, Fairmont State number 4, Glenville State number 5. Chuck, you agreed with the coaches. Charleston is your favorite to win the league this year.
Yeah, this was one of the leagues where it really wasn't too difficult for me to land on who I think the favorite is. I don't think there's any doubt it's Charleston. They were a very
Yeah.
good team last year, very competitive, won the MEC for the first time in program history, won a playoff game, got really, really close to getting into that regional final. Really had Kutztown on the ropes and unfortunately just couldn't quite finish. But really quality football team on both sides of the ball. Very balanced. Offensively very balanced. Just the balance that they have between offense and defense. Just a really fundamentally sound football team. When I look at the Mountain East, kind of like we talked about with the GLVC, Justin, I'm really kind of looking at where's the challenge going to come from. So I definitely think Charleston's a team to beat, but where's the challenge going to come from? Frostburg State kind of fell back a little bit last year. We didn't talk about them quite as much. Expect them to be pretty good again this year, but that number 2 pick in the coaches poll, that might have been a little bit of a surprise to some people. UNC Pembroke, we know from having covered teams in the Carolinas that Pembroke, there's some history there. Playing as independent, they had a lot of very successful years. They played as a scheduling partner in the SAC. They had some very good teams. Of course, Pete Shinnick was there. I really built that program up.
Very tough.
They look
very
like
tough
they're
place to play.
Yes, and they really look like they're on the way back. The coaching change last year, brought in Mark All from Showan. Immediate impact there. Very good season last year, and obviously the coaches took notice, putting the Braves up there at number 2 in this preseason poll.
Yeah, again, this is another league where I think your top 2, top 3 teams, you flip a coin and there could be an outlier, 4 or 5. Give us your team to watch here in the league.
Going with Fairmont State. Now, we do have some expectations here because they're number 4 here in the league. They had a really good season a year ago, and in fact, good enough that their head coach was hired to move on to an FCS program at Morehead State. So, can they sustain that momentum? And that's been something that's been hard to do at Fairmont the last several years. A successful season has tended to be followed by, some 500 kind of seasons. So kind of looking to see if they can sustain that momentum, even through the coaching change and a little bit of roster turnover. We'll see if the Falcons can keep the program together.
Excellent. Well, excited to see it again. Another conference that is going to be super competitive. I think particularly once we get down the stretch in October, November, and that brings up the Northeast 10, defending champion New Haven, and New Haven picked to win it at 1, Bentley 2, Assumption 3, St. Anselm 4, and Franklin Pierce is 5.
I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here, Justin. New Haven is definitely the safe pick here. I mean, they always are because they're just such a consistent winner and just a really consistent program, but very well coached, very well run program. So, they're definitely the safe pick. I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here. I think Assumption bounces back. I talked about them on our Week 0 preview for Inside D2 Football as kind of my bounce back team for the year. Things just kind of went a little sideways for them in the second half of last year. But we got into the middle of October last year. They were a 5-1 football team with a quality win over Kutztown, and their only loss was at Grand Valley State. So they really had it going. Yeah. And then they just got decimated by injuries. A lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense too. And things just kind of fell apart for them, and they lost the last 4 games of the season, finished 5-5. They're a well-coached team. Good leadership there. I think they're going to bounce back. And not only do I think they're going to bounce back to a winning season, I think maybe they get back to the top of this conference and maybe steal a championship here when we get into November.
Excellent. And as we look at the team to watch, and that's not a logo we see very often, Chuck. So go ahead and give us your team to watch here in the Northeast 10.
Still a team that Division II teams and even any Division II fans and even any 10 fans are still kind of getting acquainted with. Franklin Pierce. They were a startup program a couple of years ago up in New Hampshire, where we don't have a ton of Division II football, but it's beautiful up there. I've been to the campus. It's in a beautiful location. Yeah. They finally started to show some strength last year. They really kind of showed that maybe there is some potential there to start building this into a winning football program. I think, being picked 5th in your conference, that's not necessarily something you could say, hey, we're really, we're really being seen now. I think
Yeah.
in their case, that's a little bit of a show of confidence that they're being picked ahead of, some much more established programs, or programs that are struggling, granted, but they're being picked
Yeah.
ahead of teams like
Yeah.
Southern Connecticut, American International, Pace. Some of those teams actually have championship history in this league, so to be picked ahead of them, I think it shows that the progress is definitely there. Don't know if a winning season's in the card, but they're getting close.
Yeah, and that's exciting to see, right? To me, it's exciting to see these teams that are taking pride in what they're doing, and not necessarily the typical footprint of New Hampshire that we're quite used to. And again, like you said, Chuck, I think it speaks to them being ranked above teams that have championship history in this league. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, we love to see that.
All right, the Northern Sun. Gosh, this is another conference that we could just go down and down and down and talk about, Chuck. Minnesota Duluth picked by the coaches to win the league. Augustana in at 2, Minnesota State at 3, Wayne State 4, Bemidji State 5. Chuck, give us your thoughts as we look at
So many
the
good,
league here.
so many contenders in this league, Justin. We talked about the MIAA and how deep that league is.
Yeah.
I don't think you have as many national championship contenders here in the NSIC, but I think you have potentially even more conference championship contenders. When I look at the top 5 there, I could make a case for any of those top 5 as the favorite to win the NSIC. The coaches went with Duluth pretty convincingly. They actually had 8 first place votes among the coaches, which in this league is a lot. So that surprised me a little bit. Now, Duluth was a good team a year ago. Finished 9-2, didn't make the playoffs, but a very good team nonetheless. Yeah. And we really did anticipate that they were going to be highly ranked. I'm going with Minnesota State to win the league, but not with a ton of confidence, and not because I don't think that they're going to be very good. Obviously, I do think they're going to win it. But again, I could make a case here for anybody. I think the Mavericks are going to have a very good team. I like the fact that they have a returning quarterback. I like the line play is always very good. I like the rushing offense that they have. But again, I could make a case for anybody in this league. But when I kind of add it all up, you got to put your confidence behind somebody, and I'm going with the Mavericks to win the league this year.
And your team to watch in the Northern Sun, Chuck?
Minnesota Moorhead. And they are definitely a team to watch.
Okay.
They have really been building something there. And, again, we talked about this with the MIAA, Justin, when you're kind of in the second half of a league that's very, very deep like this, it's just very difficult to punch your way into that top half. But Moorhead has really been getting there. They were a very competitive team a year ago, a couple quality wins. I mean, they had Minnesota State on the ropes, just couldn't quite get it done on the road. But I think this is a very competitive football team. A couple players that we really want to keep an eye on, a couple of Elite 100 watch list players. Jack Strand, the quarterback there, is somebody that we have as a squad player on the offensive side of the ball for them. And there's a lot of extra talent on that team as well. So I think they're definitely a team that we want to be keeping an eye on as we enter into this 2024 season.
Yeah, this is one of those conferences, I think, Chuck, as we talk about, I get really excited to talk about, because you talk about depth, right? And so we've got 1 through 5 on the screen, but that doesn't mean that there's not a team listed that may not be at 2 or 3 when it finishes here at the end of the season. So these to me are the most exciting conferences, because they're so competitive, and week in and week out is a battle. And that's truly, I think, what's so special about Division II football's conferences like this, that just week in and week out, it's going to be competitive.
Yeah, and I'll give you another name to keep an eye on there for the Moorhead Dragons. Gage Florence, the wide receiver.
Okay.
I talked about Jack Strand, the quarterback. Gage Florence, the wide receiver. He's kind of the running game in that Moorhead offense. They do a lot of short passes to him because he's just so good at creating some open space. Catching those short routes. He's just such an excellent possession receiver, but he can do a little bit more than that as well. Whit and I kind of joked in our debut episode of Inside D2 Football. I said, Whit, I'm going to set the over under for total catches for Gage Florence at about 110. Are you going to take the over or the under on that? So look out for him to have another really big season.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So the PSAC, the Pennsylvania Athletic Conference, defending champion is Kutztown. Now, if we look at the coaches poll, in the East, Kutztown was 1, Shepherd was 2, and East Stroudsburg was 3. And if we flip over to the West, Slippery Rock is 1, California 2, and IUP 3. Chuck, you went with Slippery Rock to win the league. A little bit of not a bold choice, but I like it. Give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the coaches went with Kutztown and Slippery Rock as the favorites in each division, and I'm totally on board with that. I think they absolutely are the favorites to win each of those divisions. They won their divisions last year, played in the PSAC championship game, played again in the playoffs. Kutztown won both of those games to earn the championship, and then also get them into the semifinals as well. So obviously, you have to respect what they've done. They're just an outstanding, just so well coached. And I've talked about them before, and the respect I have for the coaching staff there at Kutztown. Definitely have to look at them as the favorite in the East. I think that right now, this year, going into the season, the gap between them and the rest of that division is pretty big. Now, we know the quality of the Shepherd program. Expect them to be back. I know that they will be very competitive, but heading into the season, I do think that Kutztown is definitely a step ahead of them. Doesn't mean that'll be the way when they meet a little bit later on in the season, but as we go into the year, I think Kutztown's pretty well clear of the rest of that division. It's a little closer on the Western side in this conference, Justin. I think the top 3 and 4 is a little bit closer. Slippery Rock is definitely the favorite. Just the talent that they bring back. They've got Braden Long at quarterback, but it's not just him. This is another team that really just reloads at the offensive line year over year. That's, to me, I mean, we talk about quarterbacks. They've had outstanding quarterbacks. They have outstanding receivers. We all know it starts up front, and Slippery Rock has really had an excellent offensive line last several years. I expect that to be the case this year, which is what gives me a lot of confidence in them. PSAC championship game will be played in the West this year, which means if Slippery Rock wins their division, they'll host that playoff game, which gives them, I think, a nice home field advantage if they do get to that point. So I'm going to go with the Rock to win the league. Kind of a little bit surprised. Coaches actually went California at number 2. Not shocking. They had a nice season a year ago, and IUP, boy, things just really kind of fell apart second half of the year.
Yeah.
I tend to think IUP is going to be back this year. I think they will be the top challenger to Slippery Rock, but California's got a ton of talent coming back as well. So it's going to be a lot closer at the top on the Western side of the conference.
All right. And who do we want to watch out for in the PSAC if there's one team you said, hey, pay attention to this team because they may surprise you?
Lock Haven, huge year for them. We talked a little bit about Missouri Southern, 5-6. So that's not necessarily something we consider a good season. But if you haven't had a winning year in 40 some years, Justin, getting to 5-6 means something. That was substantial progress for Lock Haven last year. To get to that point, they were very competitive. They definitely could have had that winning season that they're shooting for. I think they have a very good chance to get that this year. For the first time in a long time, there's real reason for optimism around the Lock Haven football program.
Okay.
And that's really nice to see because it literally has not happened in my lifetime. So happy to see that for them.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Chuck, if we get into the RMAC now, defending champ is Colorado Mines, and the coaches again picked the Colorado Mines to win the league. Western Colorado at 2, CSU Pueblo at 3, Colorado Mesa 4, and Black Hills State at 5. Chuck, you picked Mines to win it. Give us the breakdown on why we can expect the Mule Riders, or excuse me, the Ore Diggers. Gosh, the Ore Diggers to win the league.
I came close to pulling the trigger on saying I was going to go with Western Colorado here because I think Western's going to be very, very good. They have been the last couple of years, very good football team. They bring a lot back this year. They have the completely rebuilt Mountaineer Bowl. There's just a lot of excitement there. We don't think Mines is going to be quite as elite this year, but they're definitely still the team to beat here.
Yeah.
Western had some confidence from the coach. I think they got 3 first place votes. So there's other people in that league that think Western might be the team to beat. But, still, when you look at the momentum that Mines has, obviously we're going to talk about the quarterback position because John Matoka has graduated, moved on. Their system is still very, very sound. The things that they do are going to work well, regardless of who's playing quarterback, in my opinion. They've always had good quarterbacks there. I expect that will be the case again this year. And there's still a lot of talent around that quarterback, right? Which is, of course, very important. Max McLeod at wide receiver is one of the best players in all of Division II, regardless of position. Offensive line is a strength for them. The Harding game went sideways for a lot of reasons, but this is still a very explosive offensive football team. And as good as Western is on defense, we still just haven't seen a defense in this league that can consistently stand up to Mines for a full 60 minutes. It just hasn't happened for a while. So I kind of have to see it to believe it here. I do think Western can be a contender, but definitely think Mines is the favorite.
Okay. And if we're going to look at one team to watch here in the RMAC, Chuck, who is it and why?
The middle part of this conference is very, very close. It's very competitive. Of course, our attention is going to be on, who's up at the top, and Pueblo might be a team that potentially kind of gets back into that conversation as well. When you start to look at the middle of the league, the Colorado Mesa, Black Hills, South Dakota Mines, Shadron, those teams are all very, very close. And Shadron's had a lot of ups and downs the last couple of years. There's a lot of history there with the Eagles. Since COVID, things have been a little difficult for them, a couple of down seasons, but last year was a bit of a step forward. And I want to see if this year might be the year that they kind of get back to being sort of the top team in that next tier in the RMAC. So we will see if the Eagles can get to that point.
It should be an exciting year. I think anytime you can start pushing, right? Colorado Mines has kind of been the class of that league for a couple of years now. And that's what we typically talk about. I think anytime you can start building that competition up, give them a run. It really kind of, it makes it, the more competitive it is. I think the better chance you have to making a run into the playoffs, right? Because it prepares you. If you go through that season and you go through it and you're just clear and above everybody else, Chuck, I think it's a disservice if you have to battle week in and week out, and it's really tough competition, and that 2 and that 3 are pushing you to be the number 1. It really helps prepare you to make that deep playoff run that we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. So, and I do think that race at the top is going to be a little closer than it has been the last couple of years.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I agree 100%.
Well, Justin, a league that you and I both know really, really well. So let's spend a couple minutes breaking this one down.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. This is the South Atlantic Conference. Both of us have spent a lot of time in it and around it and covering it. So very exciting. Defending champ is Lenoir-Rhyne Bears. Lenoir-Rhyne picked to win the league again, followed by Wingate at 2, Limestone at 3, Mars Hill at 4, Newberry at 5. Lenoir-Rhyne, we all know, deep run in the playoffs, lose their head coach, a lot of turnover, a lot of guys enter the transfer portal. You don't see it the same way the coaches see it. You actually took Wingate for this one, Chuck.
Well, I think the coaches are really kind of just putting some confidence in the depth and the quality of the program at Lenoir-Rhyne, where they've been the last several years. Success with different head coaches, being a very consistent contender. There's just a lot of infrastructure there at Lenoir-Rhyne that gives you confidence that they're going to be a good football team. So I understand why the coaches went that way, but I'm going with the Bulldogs here, Justin. I think that, they were obviously, they have been very, very good over the last 5-6 seasons, and one of the most consistent teams in this region, certainly in this conference. And we probably don't have a ton of time to elaborate on all of it, but there have been so many coaching changes in the SAC. And Wingate's one of those teams with a new head coach. But this is one where the coaching change really doesn't give me any pause about them being a legit contender here. Obviously, this was a very smooth transition for them. Joe Reich stepping down from head coach to become the full-time athletic director. Rashawn Jordan becomes head coach. He's been there for almost the entirety of Coach Reich's reign. So this is a very seamless transition, at least for this year. We get a couple years down the road, maybe things look a little bit different, but I think it's a very seamless transition for them. We know about their defense. Need to see their offense do a little bit better of a job, be a little bit more consistent in big games. I think that's where they've kind of come up short a
Yeah.
little bit over the last couple of years when they get into those really good teams. But we also saw them really meet the moment a couple times. That game against Lenore Ryan last year, they need to make some plays offensively and explosive plays down the stretch to win that game, and they were able to do it. So, it's close between those two. I do think it's those two. Behind them, I would actually put Mars Hill up there at number 3. I think Limestone,
Yeah.
not sure, a lot of change there. Definitely like the quarterback situation that they have at Limestone with Noller, but I think Lenore Ryan and Wingate are the top 2 teams here, and I'm just going to give the Bulldogs a little bit of an edge, at least here at the start of the season.
Yeah, and I think with so much head coaching turnover in the league, it's really hard. You look at the consistency at the top couple positions, and after that, it's really hard to kind of pencil in where it could shake out. And actually, one of your teams to watch is a team I particularly think is going to be have a pretty good season this year, and it's a team with a very rich history in the league and team we don't talk about very often, Catawba. Chuck, why are they your team to watch this season?
Well, Tyler Haynes heading into year 2 at Catawba suddenly has become one of the most tenured coaches in the South Atlantic Conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were. I know I was very excited about that hire when it was announced.
Yes.
This was a program that just really needed something to give it some new life, kind of give it some refreshed energy. He definitely brought that to the program. Really kind of transformed a lot of the culture there. You really kind of building up that offense. He came from Shepherd, where they were just putting together record-setting offenses, but he's also a coach that has history as an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and a head coach, which you don't find too many coaches with that kind of background. And I think he's been a really good fit there. I can't wait to see what they look like in year 2. Are they a championship favorite yet? No, you got to think that's probably still a year out. But I think they're going to be a very competitive football team. And if they kind of punch up into that tier of being, kind of the leaders of the challengers to Lenore Ryan and Wingate and maybe Mars Hill, I think Catawba can be that team. But you know this league really well also. So who is a program out there that you think is maybe a little under the radar that you would keep an eye on?
Yeah. So first of all, I love the Catawba pick right there. Teams to watch. Everything you said, I completely agree with. I think there is another team that we have to pay attention to, and that's the Anderson Trojans. They are a new team playing for the first time this year. Head coach Bobby Lamb, very successful coach. In Division 2, been in Division 1, just a very successful coach, knows how to build a program and has done that at Anderson. They've put the resources in, the facilities are in, and they've been practicing for a couple of years. So yes, this is year 1 that they're actually playing games and it counts, but they're a team that for me, having been in and around the SAC for a couple of years now, it's hard to believe this is year 1 for them, Chuck. It feels like they've been playing because they've been practicing for 2, 3, I don't know, it feels like 5 years now, but I think they're a team that if I think they have the resources and I think they have the coaching pedigree on staff to make a run. And it would not surprise me if at the end of the season, they're in the top 5 of that league. I think that they've got the pieces to put in there. Now, are they going to win the league? I'm not going to say that, but I think they're going to be a team that by the end of the season, you're going to be like Anderson Trojans. That's, they're going to make a name for themselves.
I'm excited for them just to be able to take the field because this has been a long time coming for them. They announced this program in late 2019.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of 5 years in the making. And that's just, publicly, there's probably a lot going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about before that. So this has really been a long time coming for them. They've gone about this methodically. They've really done things the right way. They've given themselves the appropriate runway. I don't know how you could possibly do better than getting Bobby Lamb as your first head coach for the reasons that you mentioned. An experienced Division I head coach at Furman and Mercer, built up the program at Mercer. So he's been through this before. He's coached in that footprint. He knows the territory extremely well. So I'm with you. If they're successful sooner than we might think, that would not be surprising at all.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. I think we have just one more league.
Oh, we are there. The SIAC, Chuck. And defending champ is Benedict they won the league the last couple of seasons, actually won Super Region 2, got some coaching turnover, got some guys in the portal, and it's a completely different season this year. And I think the coaches feel that way too, Chuck. They voted Albany State 1, Fort Valley State 2, Miles 3, Tuskegee 4, and then Benedict down to 5.
Yeah, well, and they got the top seed in Super Region 2. Definitely didn't win it. I think that's part of why we're seeing not quite as much. Yeah, yes. And I know that you know that.
Misspoke on that. Sorry about
that. Justin, I kind of thought we would be breaking some news by not having Benedict ranked in the preseason top 25 and not really considering them to be the favorite here. And then the coaches poll came out and they've got Benedict all the way down at 5. So clearly they're kind of reading it the same way that, obviously we have so much respect for what they did the last 2 years. Winning any conference 2 years in a row undefeated is incredibly hard to do. What Chenesbury and the Tigers did those last 2 years is very, very impressive. But this is a new year and it's really going to kind of be a new team as well. So, I think that they're kind of being looked at in their league is that you're going to have to prove yourselves all over again. And I think that, they're kind of just being looked at as a team that's probably still going to have to, go through some more growing pains to get back to that level. Coaches went with Albany State. I mean, I get that. They were in the championship game a year ago. They've been a very consistent program. So I don't really have any qualms with that pick. I went with Fort Valley. They've just been very consistent in this league. They're a consistent winner, a very consistent challenger, just a quality program. I think with some of the other programs, and some of the things that they might be up against this year, I think this is the year that Fort Valley kind of breaks through and wins that championship. I know some others are really looking at Miles as a favorite here as well, but I'm going with the Wildcats. I think this is Fort Valley State's year.
Awesome. And a team to watch. I'm familiar with this logo, Chuck, but I'll let you talk about your team to watch in the SIAC for 2024.
Well, if you were paying attention last year, this was literally a team you wanted to watch because they just had so many games that came down to dramatic finishes at the very end. But beyond that, I think that they've really already surpassed expectations during their kind of early couple of years or transition phase to Division II. Being perfectly honest, Justin, when they started their transition, I really did not expect much of them. I thought that they would be completely anonymous and probably the type of team that would be, maybe a 1-2 win league. And because this league can be very deep. And I thought it was going to be a really difficult transition, and they have proven me wrong. They're doing things the right way there. They were a very competitive football team a year ago, had some really quality wins. If you saw the Hail Mary victory at the end against Tuskegee, that was one of the more dramatic moments of the entire Division II season a year ago. So I'm excited to see what they can do, building off of that, coming into a season where, maybe the league overall is a little bit closer together without like a real prohibitive favorite. Maybe this is a year that a team like Edward Waters could really kind of get up there and finish in one of these top couple positions.
That's exciting. Yeah. I mean, I think their evolution and growth has been exciting to watch. I think definitely I would be with you on that. Definitely surprised. Definitely didn't know what to expect, but definitely living up to the the hype, if you will. So.
For sure. Well, did you think we could honestly do 15 conferences in less than 1 hour?
Chuck, I'll be honest with you. No, I didn't. When we said, hey, when we sat down and we said we're going to do 15 conferences, I'm like, this is an hour and a half, but to get through it in an hour and have minimal snafus, if any at all, that's pretty good. So
I was fully expecting we'd have to maybe chunk this up and do it by region or do one half of the country and then maybe the other half. But this was fun to do. I appreciate you jumping on and kind of guiding us through this, Justin. We'll see where this goes throughout the season. We won't be doing a separate week 0 preview just because it's not a full slate of games, and we already talked about all the big games coming up on Inside D2 Football last Sunday night. So we're not going to do a full preview of all the games for this week, but the plan is that we'll try to do this each week and really break down the games that we're keeping an eye on. And, also as we go through this, I've mentioned this a couple times on the other shows, but we have some really good podcasts and columnists for leagues like the MIAA, the GLIAC, the GAC, the PSAC. So we have really good coverage there. So we're going to try where we can to make sure we devote some coverage to the leagues that we don't actually have columnists and podcasters for. So if you're a fan of the GLVC, the GMAC, the MEC, make sure you tune it in. This is where we're going to try to make sure that we give your team some appropriate coverage.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Chuck. I think it's going to be really exciting this year to turn the national column into a national podcast, so to speak. Look forward to spending some time every week getting to dive into that and break down some big matchups and kind of what to expect each week in Division II football on a little bit more of a personal level. So looking forward to it. So for Chuck Bitner, I'm your host, Coach Poe, and we look forward each week to seeing you here on the D2Football.com National Football Preview Pod. We look forward to seeing you here next week as well. We will talk to you then. Thank you.